Let's conclude with this, and I'll start with you again, Dr. Arthur Kennedy. The Apex Court has also ruled that it is unconstitutional for salaries to be paid to presidents' spouses. We're going to be looking into that issue, especially on the back of the Professor Yah, committee and its decisions on the matter. What do you make of it? For a long time, we've been doing this. So the spouses of presidents get certain perks, certain benefits. They are using the V8s. They are driving on our fuel. They are getting some money at the end of the month. There was a hue and cry about this some months back. And now the court has ruled this. What does this mean to you? And is it the right decision, do you think?
It is a wonderful decision. This was just stealing. When you break it down, I am not as legally sophisticated about all this, but there has been a lot of looting of public resources under Article 71. And the most egregious example is the payment for spouses. I mean, how greedy can you be that there are carpenters and teachers and others, and they look after their spouses, and you are president or vice president, and in addition to all the privileges you get, the public should pay your spouse? The people who did that should be ashamed of themselves. And I am surprised that every 4 years in this quadrennial looting exercise, they get some uninformed professor to lend their professorial pattern to this, which is legalized stealing. The Supreme Court ought to be commended for that. And if I had my own way, we should go back and recover every cedi of money paid to a presidential spouse illegally.
For you, Dr. Kwapong, what is your reflection on this? I mean, the court has ruled, but as Dr. Arthur Kennedy is saying, this has been what? They will find some professor to give legitimacy to this, but they should be ashamed of themselves. This has legitimized stealing. That's what he's saying. Do you agree with him? Hello, Dr. Kwapong.
Yes, sorry about that. And particularly for this most recent emolument committee, if you look at the principles, I think they had about 10 principles that they espoused as the guiding principles that informed the work they did. When their report came out, I always said I was quite surprised that given those 10 principles, that they ended up with some of the recommendations that they made. Because based on those principles they so neatly espoused, there were some recommendations that should have never found its way into that report. I really found them to be quite odd. One of them particularly being this issue of payment of salaries to the spouses of the president and the vice president, which the court rightly has ruled out as unconstitutional because they are not, quote unquote, classified as public offices. Yes, they may do things in their role that is public in nature, but I am not sure how the emoluments committee figured out that you can expand the coverage and the meaning of Article 71 to include them. Yes, we make certain public resources available to their office to enable them to do certain things, which for me there isn't anything necessarily wrong with it, right? I mean, if you provide security to the First Lady, a mode of transportation to the First Lady to do certain public things. Those things, are okay.
And you're saying restricted to public things, because I've heard people say, for example, that if she's going somewhere in the accompanying her spouse to go somewhere, let's say it's Independence Day. Of course, you cannot say that. So she can be in the president's car or something of the sort, but not a separate, arrangement for her, because the taxpayer is not meant to pay for that. There are other things we've heard. If out of her own goodness of heart, and that is assuming, because for now we've had only females as, as spouses, she wants to embark on a project and all of that. If she's able to raise funds, fine, but not from the public purse. So these are some concerns that have emerged. Are they not legitimate?
And they are very legitimate. They are very legitimate concerns. So I do not disagree with some of those issues that have been raised. The other thing that, as per the ruling, I saw a comment yesterday on social media where someone said, well, so does that mean that they would, if they were, they were employed, for instance, and now they have to, quote unquote, give up that job to become, first lady or second lady, are we saying that they cannot earn an income? But there are also certain things that once you make a choice to do, comes with a certain element of sacrifice. And so that sacrifice cannot therefore be compensated by classifying you as a public office holder and therefore be paid a regular monthly salary, which means that then at the end of that term in office, you also then become entitled to an extra share, something that is already creating a lot of angst among the Ghanaian public. So for me, it's a good decision that has come from the court, because then what's the next step? Because we've been really taking quite an interesting view of this Article 71. And so a time is going to come when another emoluments committee may even decide to expand the meaning and definition of public office holder and decide that other persons may even be entitled to some emoluments under that article.
Let me come into the studio. Roxanne, yes. So this is the situation. I wouldn't say I'm inclined to think, but I'm beginning to wonder, with what the Constitution says versus these committees and the work they've done over time, should someone somewhere, whether president or otherwise, not have realized that, listen, explicitly the Constitution and the rules we have do not mention my spouse. My spouse shouldn't be benefiting. They didn't have to take this. In other words, have our people over time had a conscience on this matter? Because they've all exploited it.
Yet, indeed, there has never been any such payment to spouses of previous presidents. The ex gratia payment. You see, they are catered for under the Presidential Transitions Act, under what the Act defines as household of the president.
Indeed.
So, if you look at the definition, Doc, the household is defined to include,
yes,
wives,
the entirety of...
Exactly. So there's a provision under the budget for the office of the president to cater for them. But why I actually went to call was because Professor Yain Tiamwa, being a successor of other such professors who headed the Emoluments Review Committee, actually went further to now recommend. Because you see, that committee, that commission was set up under the Constitution, which was given effect to by the Presidential Transitions Act. So when the president sets up the committee, it's in pursuance of law, and you are given terms of reference. So one of the key issues I raised before the Supreme Court was that they went outside of their mandate. Your mandate was to determine the emoluments for Article 71 of its holders.
And that was what at the time people had said, that they had gone outside there.
Yes. So, but the Supreme Court refused to make pronouncement on that. So they refused that.
Where does that leave?
No. But you see, when things are done supposedly in pursuance of law, and I think that the law has been breached or has not been complied with, or the person has gone outside of his mandate, the court has the power to make that pronouncement, but they didn't. So they only materially held my material relief, which was that the payment to them was unconstitutional. Now, it will also defeat the argument that many spouses of president, they ought to be regarded as public officers, public office holders. It's a matter of law. If you read our Article 284, it's very clear who a public officer is, and what constitutes public office. And then we have other enactments that defines public office. So There's no way a spouse. So tomorrow, if we have a president who has 3 or 4 spouses, they should all be given these largesse. So clearly, the court was right that if you are not a public officer, properly so-called, you are not a public officer to be catered for, especially under Article 71.
How then do you react to this? I see a comment coming through from Echo Claria who says, Benjamin, my question to your panelists then is that, can the president therefore appoint the presidents, appoint their wives into public offices?
Yes.
Hold on.
Yeah.
They are Ghanaian and may have the competence to head state institutions or even ministerial positions. But you also know that if that happened, Ghanaians will take it on as probably the height of family and friends in government. You are aware of that? Right. I think it's Yoweri Museveni or something recently, the wife or daughter, something of the sort. But
no, I think that was...
If we want to say...
There's something like that, but
they are not... Yeah. They are Ghanaian, but they don't deserve anything. Then the other end is that, well, they are Ghanaian, and so what if they are qualified for certain roles? How do you address that?
Okay, the qualification, for instance, for a president to appoint a minister of state is for that person to be qualified to be a member of parliament. All right? So if the president's wife is qualified to be a member of parliament, the president can appoint her.
Member of parliament? I mean, you go through an electoral process.
I'm saying that the qualification for the president to appoint a person to occupy a ministerial portfolio in this country is the criteria that the person must be qualified to enter parliament. And the qualification to enter parliament is to be a Ghanaian citizen. You must be
of sound
mind. It must be a registered voter. And then what else? I think 21 years or so. That's all. That's all. So if the president's wife qualifies within this remit, she can be appointed.
Okay.
What is restraining presidents from doing so is the moral code.
Right.
Is the moral code.
Right. Let me take your quick thoughts on that, these last aspects, and then we wrap the conversation. Final thoughts, Dr. Arthur Kennedy.
Excellent rulings by the Supreme Court. These Article 71 things have been stealing exercises that have been dressed up as processes. And as for appointing spouses, if we don't check it, very soon we'll be there, because if you look at how one family is dominating our governance, jumping to spouses is a very easy jump. But I say that to say that it does not mean that it should never be done. For example, I think Dr. Kwapong was very qualified to be a minister. I think that 1 or 2 members of the family sometimes are so eminently qualified that we shouldn't quarrel with that. But common sense dictates that there are certain things that in a republic and a democracy we shouldn't do. And I want to also put on the table the fact that presidents don't pay taxes. I think presidents should pay taxes as an example. But overall, commendations to the Supreme Court. Kudos to Speaker Babin and members of Parliament for the work they are doing. Continue the work so that we can use the talents of all Ghanaians regardless of where they are. We should know that they are not Ghanaians because they are born in Ghana. It is because Ghana is born. And sometimes even Black Americans and Caribbeans are more patriotic than local Ghanaians.